This video
All right, everybody, we're about to get started. If y'all want to take your seats, we're going to get started in about 3 or 4 minutes. Take your seats, please. All right, all right, all right. We're going to get started. Everybody take your seats, please. Taylor, you want to introduce? Oh. Hey, I can stage fright.
Go for it.
I don't know the whole script, so I may miss some key points. But first, I appreciate you guys coming out and joining us today. I know the weather isn't the best as it could be. It's a Monday, and it's a little late, but regardless, you are here with us. First, we can introduce what even the co-founder meetup is. It's really a collection of people in y'all's space, in our space, the tech space, and bringing people that, whether it be a co-founder, an investor, or somebody who already has a company, a great keynote speaker like Tom, together to facilitate relationships that are more intentional. There's a lot of networking events here in Austin, but showing up to a bar and saying it's a networking event is kind of getting old. So that's kind of the point of what we're doing here. Hopefully it's more intentional and you're finding some value, and through that building relationships and hopefully building a business. The crew, Johan, he's not with us today, but he is the founder and CEO of the TechMap, which is kind of the umbrella for the co-founder meetup. No dice. Oh, there you go. You press a little harder. What's going on today? Mix and mingle. We've already done that. Announcements happening as we speak. And the keynote speaker, again, Mr. Tom Singer. Followed by a little bit more networking. So that's going to look like Brandon Carpenter would speak for 10 seconds and talk to us about why he's here. And then we would follow suit for the rest of the room. So that way you don't have to talk to everybody to figure out, okay, is this why I came here today? You can specifically figure out, okay, who do I need to talk to and why, and be more intentional with what you're doing. Our sponsors, Capital Factory, of course. That's why we're able to have this beautiful venue, if you want to call it that. New York Life, IV Bars, Mr. Colt Monclaw, ACC, TechMap, Euroway. Why we name it the TechMap? We actually have an interactive map on our website. So if you haven't been, www.thetechmap.com. It's an interactive map, as you can see, that shows all the different tech events that are going on, not only in Austin, nationally, and we're working more to be, I guess, more involved globally. The reason why we're here, we kind of went over this already. Different groups that you can find, kind of like Meetup, but more tech-centered, more tech-focused. Yeah, you can post jobs. So if you have a company where you need maybe a developer, or if you're looking for some work, I'd recommend checking out our site. Format, I see a lot of familiar faces, but I'll still go over it. Networking, keynote speaker, we'll have some pitches. Everybody will introduce themselves, followed by, again, more networking. Today we just have 2 pitches. Alec Mock with GenWise, and then Mr. Steven Peterschmidt, hopefully I pronounced that correctly. And a quick bio of Mr. Tom Singer before he can come up. Tom, I have met through Alex. Where's Alex? Alex Kopsel. Referred me to Tom, and then we had coffee at Radio, which I no longer go to because parking is horrible. And through that, we facilitated a great relationship, figured out more of who he is and why he is that way, and figured out some of the engagements that he's been a part of, which is pretty impressive. So we'll hear from him here in about 2 seconds. I won't butcher his intro, but everybody, if we can give it up for Mr. Tom Singer.
It's all good. I just have a little timer so I don't go long. How's everybody doing tonight? So, how many people have seen me speak before? Only one person? That's awesome, because I can totally make stuff up. That is perfect. So when I talk about what I call connecting with people in a gadget-crazy world, the one thing that I really like to do is sort of reset your expectations. Because the problem is we all come into situations with preconceived notions. We really can't help it, right? Whatever experience that we've had in the past are somehow put into our head, and we go everywhere we go with those preconceived notions. And so when I talk about that, what I'm really talking about is networking. when I'm talking about connecting with people, and every single one of you has an opinion about what networking means. You have all read books on it, you've been to classes on it, you've had someone come into your company and talk about it, and some people have really good opinions of it, like, oh, that's how you get business done. People do business with people they know, like, and trust. Other people are a little bit more moderate about it, and some people are like, oh my God, I hate these networking events. It's just like cheap wine and cheese. I hate oh, look, there is cheap wine and cheese. I'm sure the wine is really expensive. So the point is that people come in with all kinds of preconceived notions. So I just want to start off by telling you a quick story. So I was born into a family where I was the youngest of 4 boys. God save my mother. Anybody else in the room a last born in their family? Raise your hands high, proudly lastborns. Okay, another question. Anybody in the room a firstborn? Yeah, I just want to know where you guys are. That's perfect. So when I was born, my brothers were ages 10, 12, and 14. Oh yeah, which means that by the time I was 3 years old, I lived in a household where there were 3 teenagers whose whole purpose in life was to torment me. Now, I don't tell you this to make my brothers sound like bad guys. They're fantastic. We have a really good relationship. They're some of the best people I know. But when they were teenagers, they had a lot of fun having a baby brother. They did all kinds of things. And one of my earliest memories, I could have been about 2.5, 3 years old. Think back, we don't have a lot of memories before that age. My first vivid memory, I am about 3 years old, and my family used to rent a beach house for 2 weeks every summer in Southern California. I grew up in Los Angeles. We would rent a beach house for 2 weeks in Newport Beach, and we would move in there. Now, here's the deal. Newport Beach of the late 60s and early 70s was not the Newport Beach of today. Seashore Drive was not lined with Kardashian-style mansions. It was lined, you know, it was lined with beach-style, like wooden shacks. Nobody wanted to live at the beach in the 60s and 70s. Living at the beach was considered a poor people place to live. Now, of course, that has switched, but my mother loved beachfront property. So we'd rent this house every year, and my first memory is this house was not big enough for a family of 6. My first memory of this house was it had a master bedroom for my parents, and it had a converted closet where they put a twin bed, where they put me, but my 3 older brothers had to sleep in sleeping bags out in the living room. Now, I want to ask you for a second. What is cooler to a 3-year-old than a sleeping bag? The answer to that, no. The answer to that is nothing. Who asked you? No. The answer to that is nothing is cooler than a sleeping bag. So in the mornings, I would wake up and I would play with those sleeping bags. I would build tent cities all over the living room. I would pretend that I was camping. And my first memory is I crawled to the bottom of a sleeping bag. And the boys zipped me up in it. Then they rolled me up in it. Then they proceeded to toss me to one another. Then they told me they'd put me on the top shelf of the closet. And I specifically remember them saying, don't move, because the closet shelf is only 1.5 feet wide. If you move, you will fall off. You could break your arm. You might die. And then they left me to go play on the beach. And I freaked out like any 3-year-old would do. I started crying. I started screaming for my mother, who, of course, being a good mom, came running to my rescue and said, what is the matter? And I said, I am on the top shelf of the closet. And my mom said, oh, sweetheart, you're on the living room floor. No, I am on the top shelf of the closet. The boys told me so. And my mom said, just because someone tells you something doesn't mean it's true. She said, why don't you roll yourself out of the sleeping bag? No, I will fall to my death. She goes, why don't you roll yourself out of the sleeping bag? And I said, okay, I did what my mom said. I rolled myself out of the sleeping bag, and as I came out of the sleeping bag, I was on the living room floor. Now, I tell you this story not to make my brothers sound like monsters, because they are fabulous men. I tell you this story because all of you in so many areas of your life, in so many areas of being entrepreneurs and starting companies and having careers, so many of you come into situations time after time with preconceived notions. You come into situations knowing what the truth is because someone told you that, or you had one experience years ago, or you just filled in the blanks because you've never experienced it before. And that's what the human brain does. When we don't know the answer, we don't sit there and say, gosh, we don't know the answer to so many things. Instead, we fill in the blanks or we totally ignore it. So I tell you this story because all of us have preconceived notions. We have to remember what my mom said. Just because you have that preconceived belief doesn't mean it's necessarily true. And that is so true when it comes to the idea of connecting with people for a business purpose. What we've come to call networking, or human-to-human networking, because now we, of course, have tech networking for computers. But what we've come to know as networking, so many people have preconceived notions about it. I wrote my first book on the subject 14, 15 years ago called Some Assembly Required: How to Make, Grow, and Keep Your Business Relationships. And that's what launched my speaking career. And I've now given more than 800 professional level speeches, both free local things like tonight, where I like to kind of give back to the tech community, because I grew up in the tech community. I worked for several companies that sold into tech. I worked for law firms, banks, and consulting firms as their marketing director for a long time. But what happened to me back in the early 2000s was I got laid off several times. Because if you think back, I moved to Austin in, gosh, when did I move here? 1991. If you think from 1991 to now, Austin has seen a lot of ups, but we've seen a lot of downs. And I've lived the ups and the downs of that over the course of my career. And about every 3 or 4 years, I would be working for a service company that would suddenly either close its doors in Austin, national law firms, national banks, would either close their doors, or they'd lay off people locally, or they'd entirely go out of business. Just poof, they're gone. I was never fired. I never was fired because of cause. I was never a bad salesman. I was always in the top 10% of everybody I worked with, but I got laid off 5 times over the course of my career. And every time I got laid off, I got a new job within 3 weeks. And after about the 3rd time this happened, people started to notice. And in the tech community, people started saying back, this is 15 years ago, people started saying, wait a minute, you're the only person I know who gets laid off up. I would lose my job, people would create jobs for me in another firm. People were like, who does that? So I worked for one of the biggest law firms in the country, and in 2004, that law firm went away. And there was an accounting firm here, which was one of the big 4 accounting firms. The managing partner called his boss in Chicago or New York and said, I need some extra money because I need to temporarily hire a marketing person. And he called me and said, look, you were so good to us when you were the marketing person for this law firm that I've got approval to hire you for 50% of your time, 20 hours a week, so that you can go look for a job, but you'll still be making a salary. It was 50% of what I earned with the law firm. He was going to pay me just because I had been nice to him and good to that accounting firm. Now, the lawyers I worked with when the firm went away, within 3 weeks, they had all scattered out to 3 different firms. All 3 firms tried to take the marketing director with them. One of them did. I never had to take the offer from the accounting firm. But that's when I started noticing that treating people well and building a network and being connected actually mattered. Now, about 10 years ago when I started doing this full time, people were telling me, well, you can't speak about this. Nobody cares about networking. That is a fluffy topic. You can't go around and speak to people in technology about networking, because what happened 10, 11 years ago? All of it. Facebook, Twitter, social media as we know it today, and the iPhone, the smartphone came into being. And all of a sudden, everybody believed, why in the world do I need to network? I can have likes, links, shares, and follows. That's all I need. For those of you who are a little bit older, who've been in the workforce for more than a decade, do you remember 10 years ago that every single conference you went to had entire tracks that were all about learning social media? How to use Twitter to advance your career, why you need Facebook, how to use LinkedIn, YouTube, all this stuff. There were entire tracks that were nothing but how to do it. I didn't expect this, but there's some of you in the audience who are a little more seasoned and have been around for a while. For those of you who've been in the workforce more than 15 years, I want you to think for a minute. On your personal side of your life, how many people feel you have more friends today because of social media? And when I say friends, I'm talking about you don't have plans for Thanksgiving, and they say, oh my gosh, come join my family for Thanksgiving. That level of friendship. How many people feel you have more friends like that today than you did a decade ago? I can do this to 2,000 people and get very few hands. There's always outliers. There's always people who have figured out how to utilize social media to actually get better friendships. Rarely do people raise their hands. Now, how many people think selling and doing business, whatever that is, how many people feel that selling and doing business is easier today than it was 10 years ago to stand out? 2, 3, 4 hands. Again, I respect the outliers because there are people who have figured out how to use these technology tools, and they are closing deal after deal after deal. But I speak 60 to 70 times a year, and I only get 3 or 4 hands in audiences 10 times this size. Most people are saying it's more competitive now than ever. There is more noise in the business world. He's taking my picture. There is more noise in the business world. Hey, I like the pictures where I'm not going like this. There's more noise in the business world now than there ever has been. It's more competitive. It's harder to stand out. So a lot of people are saying technology is great. And I'll tell you, it's not like I'm dissing social media. Every now and then someone will call me and say, oh, we can't hire you. We have an entire young audience. It's all tech. They won't like your message because you're anti-tech. That is not at all what I am. I am totally pro-technology. If you follow me, I am on Instagram. I am on LinkedIn. I am on Twitter. I am on YouTube. I am on all these things. Snapchat I can't figure out, but the rest of it I've gotten down. I use all of this stuff. However, I do not believe that it replaces that face-to-face, human-to-human engagement. And I think at no time in our history has it been more important that we choose people. Because it used to be, well, it still is, people do business with people they know, they like, and they trust. Now, a lot of you are thinking, I heard that before. Tom, you didn't make that up. People do business with people they know, like, and trust. That's a cliche. Well, cliches are all based in truth. So that's the first part. The second part is that it used to be a process. To even think on the slightest level that you know somebody. You had to see them at TechMap 4 or 5 times, 4 months in a row. You had to run into them while you were out and about. Maybe you had to go to a conference and they were there like, hey, I know you. And over time you got to know them. And like and trust came along. Or it didn't, because you're not going to like and trust everyone you meet. And that's okay. That's just people. We're not going to like everybody. We're not going to trust everybody. But for the most part, when you went through the process of getting to know people, like and trust came along. Now, we all want to fast forward getting to know somebody. The definition of the word know, K-N-O-W, I think has changed drastically in our society the last 10 years because of social media. I think we all now think, oh my gosh, I know Taylor because we follow him on Twitter. I'm assuming Taylor is a lot more than his Twitter account. But we all think we know him. Oh my gosh, she's my Facebook friend. People tell me all the time, Tom, I know you because I listen to your podcast. Now, I have a pretty widely listened to podcast. I do a podcast called Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do. If you're an entrepreneur, Inc. magazine said one of 8 podcasts you should listen to in 2018. I'm proud of that, so I'm telling you. But the reality is, I have people all the time say, I know you because I listen to your podcast. You don't know me. You know my opinions on entrepreneurship. You know how I interview, but you don't know anything about me. If you listen to my podcast, you don't know about my relationship with my wife. You don't know how I treat my kids. So the whole point is that we've fast-forwarded the idea of know, K-N-O-W, and like and trust aren't coming along. Oh, she's my Facebook friend. What does that mean? Oh, we're connected on LinkedIn. Who cares? When's the last time you woke up at 3 a.m. and said, who is a person I'm connected to on LinkedIn who I've never met, never had a conversation to, but we were at a conference one time, so I just linked to everybody who was there. How can I refer them a piece of business? The answer is probably never. Every now and then someone comes up and goes, no, I did just that the other night. I looked through LinkedIn and said, who have I never met who I can help? Awesome. Doesn't happen very often. My take is that the people who we wake up at 3 a.m. and say, I want to help, is Brandon. Not actually Brandon. He probably thinks you should wake up at 3 a.m. and help Brandon. But the reason is it's people that we know who we have a personal engagement with, and we're like, oh my gosh, Brandon should know Sally. And then later the next day, we send an email and introduce him. It's because we've gotten to a human-to-human connection with them. So my father, my dad, if he was still alive, he would turn 104 years old this month on the 21st. He would be 104. My dad was born in 1914. Now you're all thinking, wait a second. If Tom's dad would be 104, how the hell old is Tom? 30, thank you. Yes, we'll give you $1 later. So I'm 52. I am the exact same age now that my dad was when I was born. And I realized that the other day, and I went to my wife and I said, oh my God, honey, I am the same age my dad was when I was born. We could have another kid. Apparently not. She told me for so many reasons we're not having another kid, some you don't even want to understand. She said, but you can't find your car keys. What makes you think you could keep up with a toddler? But if my dad was still alive, and he lived to be 99, my dad only passed away 5 years ago, just shy of that 100th birthday. If my dad was still here, and if I brought him up, I said, Dad, this is the TechMap people. My dad would say, well, you guys have met my son. He was a surprise. least one person gets it. You know what a surprise is? A surprise is an accident that worked out really well because he liked me. But the thing was, is that, so my dad, though, he was born in 1914, and he went through the most amazing 100 years anybody could have lived. If you think back about the last 100 years, could you have lived in a more progressive time? He saw so many changes in the world, both socioeconomic, technology, and culturally. He saw so many changes in the world. But I asked him one time, and he was still with it at 99. I asked him one time before he died, I said, Dad, awesome that you've lived for 100 years. What's the biggest change in people? And my dad looked at me and he said, people haven't changed at all. And I said, that can't be true. There are people paid a lot more than me to go speak on millennials. Have you ever been to a conference or something or read an article where people talk about millennials? They're paid hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars a year because people have so drastically changed. Dad, I wish I was a millennial speaker because I would make more money. The world has to be different because everyone's talking about how different they are. And he goes, I've lived through like 5 generations. They're not different. I said, yes, they are. There's millennial experts. That's on their business card. And he said, it's all bullshit. He said, people haven't changed at all. And I said, yes, they have. There's the millennials. And he said, go take the Bible out. Now, my dad was not a religious guy. I thought that was kind of an awkward choice. Go get the Bible. And he goes, go read any story in the Bible. Do you know what you're going to find? You're going to find stories about lust, greed, marriages that worked out, marriages that didn't work out, people who cheated. You're going to find stories about wars and famine. You're going to find stories about business dealings that went good. You're going to find business dealings that went bad. You're going to find stories about governmental leaders who were adored, followed by governmental leaders who were hated. Does that sound familiar? It's the same thing you hear when you watch the news or read something today. Same stories. People haven't changed at all, he said. He said the only thing that's changed is the tools we use to communicate. He said when he was a kid, he grew up with a wealthy family. They were the first people in his neighborhood to have a telephone. The neighbors used to come over to visit the telephone. Now, unless you have an iPhone 10, has anybody come to visit your telephone? No. But in his neighborhood, people came over. They would leave like a quarter so they could call a relative who had a phone in Chicago. My dad remembers being a little kid and people being so excited to talk into the telephone to someone on the other side of the country, and people would leave crying. He said, now everyone who comes to see me has one telephone, if not 2. My older brother, who lived down the street from my dad when he was in his retirement home, my brother had a work phone and a personal phone. And he goes, everybody has 1, if not 2. He goes, your brother has 2. And he goes, I play a little game when people come to visit me. Now, the only people who came to, my dad outlived all of his friends, right? So when you're 99, all of your friends have died. The only people who came to visit him were my brothers and his wife who lived in California. I would come out once in a while. And some of my cousins, so my dad's nephews and nieces. And that was about all that came to visit him, and his grandchildren. And he goes, I play a little game. It doesn't matter if they're in their 60s or 70s or if they're in their teens. When they walk in the door, I look at the clock. And I say, I wonder how long till they pull out a phone. He goes, the average time is about 2 to 3 minutes. That's the average time when you go to visit your grandfather that it takes for you to look at your phone. Now, sometimes he said it's the one-hip sneak. You guys know what the one-hip sneak is? That's this. He said, everybody's looking at their phones. He goes, so people haven't changed. The tools we use to communicate have changed, and the current generations, and that's all of us, have been seduced by this. So when it comes to really connecting with people, and I've got to wrap this up, when it comes to connecting with people, my dad always said, you have to choose people. All of this social media stuff that we have, all of this digital stuff is fantastic. I love progress. But think about who you go out of your way to serve. Is it someone you've never met? Is it someone who sent you a LinkedIn request because you both went to Cornell and they live in Seattle and you accepted that connection without ever sending them a note? I have a personal rule when it comes to Facebook and LinkedIn. And 10 years ago, I used to talk to audiences of thousands of people at these conferences that had social media gurus on the same docket or whatever agenda. And they would mock me, and they would say, oh, he's so full of shit. He doesn't know. Clearly, because I was 40, I was so old. Well, now I'm 52. I'm older. But they would say, oh, because my rule was I don't link to people on Facebook or LinkedIn. Now, Twitter's a different animal. YouTube, all that, it's all different. Facebook and LinkedIn, I don't link to anybody who I haven't had a cup of coffee or a meal with, or a beer. takes about 15 minutes to an hour to sit down and have a cup of coffee with somebody. So if someone sends me a link and they live locally, I usually reply to them and say, why don't we meet for coffee? Every now and then someone's right back, so I don't want to meet you for coffee. I just want to have a LinkedIn request. Well, guess what? That's stupid. I had somebody tell me their assistant reached back out to me and said, yeah, he doesn't want to actually have coffee with you. He might run for a political office someday. He's just compiling his list on Facebook. Think about that. He's compiling his list on Facebook. Oh, yay, he can spam me later. Of course I want to connect with him. No. I don't link to people I haven't had a cup of coffee, a meal, or a beer with. So I call it, and I have called it for 12 years, the coffee, meal, or beer rule. 10, 12 years ago, people mocked me for it. Now all these same social media experts, guess what they're doing? They're all pairing out their things. Oh, I've never met these people. I'm deleting everyone I've never met. I reached out to one of them. I won't say his name. You all know who he is. He's Twitter famous. And I said, so funny, he and I are friends. He goes, you used to mock me for my coffee, meal, or beer rule. And he goes, well, it wasn't real. It was all about getting the masses, the useful idiots, to follow me because they were like, yeah. And he goes, now everybody is crowded. So when I say I'm deleting people I haven't met, they go, yeah. That's the people we follow in this world. They're selling to whatever we want. Is that who you want to be? You want to be a useful idiot? Or do you want to go out of your way to choose people? Link to people who you can have a real relationship with. Choose people who want to choose you back. Don't follow the gurus. I think the guru class is the biggest BS that's happened to us in tech and everything else. Look for people who you know, you like, and you trust. And if you don't know them, get to know them. And if like and trust comes along, that is awesome. 2 last bits. I'm running a couple minutes long. They're not going to tackle me? No one's going to tackle me. Couple last things. One is I invented a term a couple years ago. I call it cooperative significance. When I interview people and spend time one-on-one, everybody tells me the same thing. They want to be significant. Now, they don't use that word. People say they want to matter, they want to make a difference, they want to contribute. But the reality is, every one of you, I argue, wants to be significant. You want to matter. You want to contribute. At home, at work, in your community, in your faith community, in the tech community in Austin, you want to make a difference. But here's a secret. You can't be significant alone in a field. And you cannot self-proclaim it. I can't stand up here and say, I am your Other people have to bestow significance on you. Someone else has to say, Eduardo, you're significant to me. You make a difference. So if you want to be significant, and I argue all of you do, are you going out of your way to let the people in your life know that they matter? Are you letting the people in your world know, thank you for participating in this organization. Thank you for being part of my company. You're significant. You matter. It's better here because you're part of the team. If you're not telling others that, why would they ever tell you that? It's like the old movie, Pay It Forward. If you're not leading with that example, other people won't follow. The best boss I ever had used to periodically, it wasn't scheduled, it wasn't Friday at 4, but he would periodically single somebody out for the contribution that they made. And it caused everyone in the company to always do the same thing. So I call it cooperative significance because if you want to be significant, and I think you do, tell others they matter. And my final thing I'll leave you with is really this thing that I call cross-generational networking. We spend a lot of time talking about the generations in our society. We talk about the baby boomers, they're getting near retirement, some of them are already there. We talk about Gen X, which there's only like apparently 3 of us according to the media. And then we talk about the millennials. And now we're starting to talk about Generation Z or whatever they're going to call them that are coming up. I know that they're all about the first Generation Zers who are about to graduate college this year because my daughter is the first year, 97 birth. This is the first year of the next generation. She'll be graduating from Carnegie Mellon in May. And so my money will stop leaving Austin for Pittsburgh temporarily until my next daughter decides to go there. But the thing is that it's not just about whatever generation you are. If everyone you hang out with is born within 5 years of you, either way, you need new friends. I tell people all the time that if you're a millennial, the baby boomers are not obsolete. You can learn so much from them. Go make friends with a baby boomer. If you're a baby boomer, go make friends with a millennial because they're not stupid, entitled, and they are not in their parents' basement. They will show you what's going on new in the world and different ways to look at it. And if you're Gen X, if you're in the middle, guess what you get to do? You get to make 2 new friends every year, because you should have older friends and younger friends. I think cross-generational networking is the one thing we haven't taught. We've taught how to divide our generations for the last 10 years. I think all of us have to work to how do we cross-pollinate our friendships over the generations. Last thing I will leave you with, how many people here have heard about an elevator pitch? Right? Those of you who are pitching, right? Everybody knows, right? In tech, have we gone crazy the last 10 years about teaching everybody the elevator pitch? Oh my gosh, elevator pitch, yeah, learn your elevator pitch. Yes, there is a time and a place for you to know how to clearly and concisely talk about who you are and what you do well. But we have spent billions of dollars in corporate America the last 10 years teaching people about this idea of the elevator pitch, and I think it's BS. Because here's what we're teaching people. When you meet someone new who maybe could invest or could be your partner, flick a switch in your back and tell them who you are and why you're great. So the idea, for those of you who don't know what an elevator pitch is, the idea is you get on the elevator on the 30th floor. Within the time it takes to go from floor 30 down to the lobby, you can tell somebody who you are and why you're great. The problem is, if you and I got in an elevator together, what's your name? Austin? Hey, you were named after a really good city. I've heard of that place. If you and I got on an elevator together on the 30th floor, and I met you, and you happened to work for a company that hires speakers to come in to do training for the team, and I was like, oh my God, Austin works for a company that has speakers come in, and I flicked a switch in my back and said, oh my God, my name's Tom Singer, I've written 12 books, I have a podcast, I speak all over the country, blah, blah, blah. Just verbal vomit all over you. What would you do when we got to the lobby? Run. I have never had a single person in an audience say, take you to Starbucks to learn more. Every audience says run. So I think we've done a disservice when it comes to networking, when it comes to connecting with people in a gadget-crazy world. We're living with this thing about talk about yourself. The real answer is ask questions about the other people. They've done surveys. The more, you've seen this on reality TV show, like dating shows. They send people out on a date and they film everything. They put a camera in the flowers. They float a microphone in the beer. They record it all. And then afterwards, they pull the people into separate soundproof booths and they said, what did you think? The person who talks the most says, I love them, I hope we get married and have 3 kids. The person who talks the least says, I don't want to see him again. When you meet somebody new, do not flick a switch and start telling them who you are and why you're so great. The elevator pitch, it's important to know how to concisely talk about yourself, but we have screwed it up for all of you. The reality is memorize questions that get other people talking, because the more you get them to talk about yourself, studies have shown, the more they like you. And I will promise you, I don't care if it's 1914, 2018, or 2042, people do business with people they know, they like, and they trust. And the only way you're ever going to get to like and trust in a world where we all think we know everybody is if you listen. Thank you. Q&A? Question? Comment? Thought? Yes. Oh, by the way, what's your name? Rick. Rick, because you're asking a question, you get a prize. You get a copy of Some Assembly Required, How to Make, Grow, and Keep Your Business Relationship, 3rd edition.
Really, it wasn't a question. I just wanted to share with you that in Newport Beach, they actually gave away property if you subscribed to the newspaper. They would give you a lot in Newport Beach at one time.
Could you imagine looking back and saying, oh no, I don't want to subscribe to the newspaper because I wouldn't want the property in Newport Beach. We actually went back and looked at the house we rented because when I was 4, apparently, I don't remember this, we had the chance to buy the house at 36th and Seashore. My brother went back to the house, which is no longer the house. It's now a Kardashian-style mansion. He looked it up. The house is worth $5 million. The lot alone is worth 4 of that. And my parents could have bought it for $47,000. So apparently my dad's entrepreneurship skills, crap. Somebody else, question, comment, thought. See how it is when you know there's prizes? You get a copy of the ABCs of Networking.
Motivation. So you talk a lot. You talked about how.
You talk a lot. Oh, yeah. It's not the first time someone started a comment with that.
So you're talking about how we need to develop these relationships with the people we do business with. What would you say are like some practical, tangible ways I can, or not just me, but I think we can actually develop these skills?
So give me a little background about you. What do you do? College student. So what type of relationships do you want to build for getting jobs later?
Probably for getting jobs, because
Getting jobs, mentors, things like that? Sure. So I happen to mentor several people in their 20s. My wife calls me the millennial whisperer because they just appear and they won't go away. There's actually 2 of them who have been around for 7 years, and I literally talk to them, if not weekly, far more than that. In fact, yesterday I spent the whole day with 2 of them at, ACL. They invited me, I bought a scalper ticket, I went to ACL, and I spent the whole day with them, and they would just introduce me to their friends as this is our dad. And people are like, I didn't know you guys were brothers. And they say, not really our dad. I teach them all the time that the number one thing that they need to do is take an interest in people. So people ask them, like the night before they'd been at ACL for several days, somebody was like, how do you guys know each other? And they go, oh, Nick and Jake have the same mentor. People are like, huh? And they were telling the story of me, and they were laughing because they couldn't explain me. The way Nick came into my life was when he went to UT San Antonio, his teacher brought people to see me speak 8 years ago for extra credit. If you went, you got 10 extra points on the final. He came, and he came up and talked to me afterwards. He asked his teacher later, do you think if I went to Austin I could buy him lunch? And the teacher's like, send him an email. He goes, oh, he's too busy. Well, he sent me an email. I thought he was a nice kid. I went to lunch with him. Over the course of the next 2 years, he came up like every 6 months. We would go for coffee. And then he was going to graduate. He wanted to move to Austin. I introduced him to people to help him find a job. He found a job. At the same time, I met this other guy, Jake. He was same age, just moved to town. I introduced them to each other, and that's how they became friends. But the fact is that they took an interest in me. Both of them. I met Jake in a Starbucks, but he was interviewing for a job with Oracle, and he was really frustrated. And he asked me if I'd watch his computer. But he had been at his computer for an hour, and I was sitting there doing some work, and he was like on the computer going, God damn it, shit, bam. He opened up, shit. So when he came back from the bathroom, I said, dude, you seem really frustrated. And he goes, I'm interviewing for a job tomorrow. This was on a Sunday. He goes, I'm interviewing for a job tomorrow, and I think they've sent me questions for the interview, but I think they're trick questions. He was like 24 years old. He goes, I think they're trick questions. And I go, you just hit the Starbucks lotto. I know about this stuff. Let me read the questions. The questions were not trick questions. I walked him through every single question, and he got the job. So he had my card. He calls me 2 weeks later and says, I have to buy you a drink. I got the job. Awesome. I like free drinks. And so that's how I met him. He took it. He was thankful that I helped him. That's how they came into my life. They paid attention to me. I was some 40-something-year-old dude, but they were like, huh. And then separately, they had both said, I could use a mentor. And I was open to the idea. So I now have a rule, though. My wife says I can't adopt any more children, but I always am willing to help people out. So if you want to connect with people, take an interest in them and ask them for your help. Especially as a college student, there's a lot of people who might be in their 30s, 40s, 50s, or beyond who would love you to say, I need some advice. I'm 22 years old. I'm trying to figure out my way in the world. You seem to be successful. Could I buy you a cup of coffee? The number one thing to do is don't say, can I pick your brain, and then not pay for the coffee. Can I tell you how many times people say, oh, I want to become a speaker. I want to write a book. I want to start a podcast. Can we get together? Yes. We show up. We stand in line at Starbucks. I order my coffee. Now, I can afford a $5 cup of coffee. But if you want to pick someone's brain, buy their lunch or buy their coffee. But take an interest in them. And not everybody, but some of them will take an interest back. Somebody else. There's another prize. Yes.
Tell me what prize it is I get.
You get another book. It's just books. Oh.
No, actually, no, I'm just kidding. So, for those who are engaging in startup enterprises, please speak on how this dynamic of getting yourself known, connecting with other people, not networking, but actual connection, is useful in growing your business.
So first of all, I love what he just said. He goes, actually connecting with people, not networking. So if we actually looked up the definition of networking in a dictionary, it's the creation of long-term and mutually beneficial relationships between 2 or more people where everyone involved in the relationship finds more success because of the relationship than they would without it. So when you say not networking, is it the long-term relationships or the mutually beneficial part you don't like? You like both of them. Well, but that's the thing. That is not in the definition of networking. Networking has been bastardized because we think it's cheap wine, cheap things, shove a business card in the hand. If you look up the definition, it's the creation of long-term and mutually beneficial relationships. What I tell people when they're going to come to an event like this, especially if they're looking for a co-founder or they're looking for investors, the number one thing people come in is they think, oh my gosh, there's going to be 60 people here. or 20, and they're like, there's going to be these people here, and I can meet somebody, and they can do something for me. When you walk in the door at a networking event, come in and think, I wonder if I can find one person that I can serve. If you were to walk into every situation with other human beings and said, what if I found one person who I could help? So Nick, who I was talking about, who is one of my fake sons, Nick, when I met him and he spoke at the thing, he went to his professor and said, we have to have him come to UTSA and speak to the whole real estate department. And the professor said, I don't think we can afford him. So when Nick came and took me to coffee, he said, how cheaply would you do it? And I gave him a number that was smaller than my corporate fee, but several $1,000s. He went to the dean and said, I want this guy to come speak to the whole department. And the dean literally said, I'll give you $1,000. Well, he was about $3,000 shy of the number I gave him. He actually called, he was a commercial real estate major. He called 4 commercial real estate companies and asked them each for $750. They all said yes. He pooled their money. He came up with the money I said to come and speak. And all of a sudden, poof, I went and spoke to the real estate department. Do you think Nick was on my radar the next time he called and said, can I go to coffee? Yes, he actually went out of his way for me. So that's the thing is, if you can pay attention to what does that other person need, not what can that person do for me. A lot of people call and they'll hear my podcast and go, can I be on your podcast? I get 7 emails a day. I do my podcast twice a week. 7 a day on average of people who want to be on Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do. Who do you think gets noticed? The people who say, I have a podcast, how about if we switch interviews? Ooh, that would be good. I'd love to be on your show. Or the people who say, oh my gosh, I would love for my CEO to be on your show. We do a sales meeting. Would you like to speak at our sales meeting? Yes, I would. Find a way to give to the other people. You're going to build much better relationships than if you're just saying, what can that guy do for me?
Mr. Alec, would you like to kick us off? Thank you, Tom. That was phenomenal.
Great job, by the way.
He was going for the fist bump and I went for the shake. That was a generational thing.
Hey,
That
then you
it
have
was.
turkey. Yeah, there you go.
It's right here. All right, right one.
Hello, my name is Alec Mock, CEO and founder of GenWise. There we go. A little bit about us. We were founded in 2015. Little story behind it. I was in college working at Apple full-time. Decided to help out some businesses for free. And they started throwing money at me. And I was like, called up my dad. I was like, Dad, I'm getting money thrown at me. What should I do? He's like, well, you need to open an LLC or something in bank accounts. And I was like, well, how to do that? He's like, I don't know, call Roger. And so throughout these 3 years, it's been feeling like it's a scavenger hunt, trying to figure out your resources, tools for your business, but also those people to connect to. So our slogan is generating wisdom by simplifying the business world. One of the major problems is business is way too complex. Also, you have a high rate of businesses failing, and then you have a knowledge gap of how to access capital and structured scalable infrastructure. With that problem is what we found out for the last 3 years working with multiple startups, small businesses, and even helping create that idea into a business, really found was a lot of hoarded knowledge. Like you have to look on forums, social media. Yeah, you can use Google, but that still takes a lot of time. So we decided to put everything into a platform. Really what it does is organize all your tools and resources in one place. Kind of think what Spotify did with your music. All it did was organize your artists, beautiful platform across multiple devices. And our solution, we're using existing technologies. So whenever you build out like software, think of building a house. You need your resources, people, also capital, but also someone to manage that. So that takes away a lot of money and time from the core mission. So we decided to do this 100% bootstrapped. It's all about the customers. And what we found out is creating this free platform and chat support. Let's do it yourself. So if you don't have the funds to tap into our business team, we still allow you to hop into the platform and build your business in totally one place. Our market. There's 543,000 new businesses being created every month here in the US. The average American consumer spends $237 a month on personal web services such as Netflix, Hulu, Uber, and Spotify. We know our market's vast. That's why we're really we're thinking globally, but acting locally. So there's 30 million plus businesses here in the US. Texas alone, 2.6 million. So we figured out a way, like, man, there's all these tools, other consultants, all these other people to do a lot of these things that these business owners need. So what we're doing next is scaling operations leanly, still being bootstrapped, and we're looking for investors as we speak. We're accelerating growth by marketing the platform, but also building out our service side to generate more revenue. So more revenue we're able to generate, more we can give to our users and build out our platform. And our goal is to keep the platform totally for free. This is a leadership team, and I'm open for any questions or answers. Yes, sir.
So what do I advantage when I pay you $249 a month? How do I gain from that?
Yes, with that $249 a month, you get a business team on tap. So this business team knows both business and, of course, tech. So you have weekly meetings with them. You're explaining what's going on in your business. They're walking you through. But also, too, if you need any processes built up, because everything's a process from start to finish, we help you walk through that. And also, too, you're the CEO. We're only there to enhance what you do. So it's really about what we know and how we can keep on enhancing your experience on the platform, but also within your business. Yes? Yes, so our target audience is people that have never built a business before. Because I personally know how that feels, and I can speak from experience. And that's 543,000 new businesses create every month. What we're actually looking into is more corporate jobs. A lot of people have expressed interest of leaving corporate, but they fully don't know how, because once you leave corporate and build your own business, you don't have that salary, access to capital, also that infrastructure. I was at Apple, I had processes for everything. I had to build all these processes in GenWise. So our goal is partnering. We're partnering with a company called SBLA, where they help provide that access to capital way easier, but also we're providing that infrastructure where it's not like you're just falling forward. Did I answer your question? Actually, both of those. Really just starting out, bringing an idea to a business, but we can also definitely still service those businesses under 10 people. Because usually if you're over 10 people, you have more like processes, infrastructure in place. We can still help, but we really like to focus on those businesses under 10 people or people creating that business. Yes? Yeah, exactly. Because we took the concept, I got a business degree, and I was doing accounting and also helping all these other companies kind of scale. And I was like, man, accounting's really formulaic. How has someone not made business operations formulaic? The tech is out there. All you got to do is piece it together. So really we have a plug-and-play model for entrepreneurs, and I can demo the platform to y'all if y'all are interested at the end. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Third guy up. I love it. This is like, see if we can, so does everybody need to stretch for just a moment? Are we good? Okay, I don't want the blank stares. All right, my name's Steve Peterschmidt. I'm the founder of a company called Porchlight. Porchlight is an app that makes it easy to know how the important people in your life are doing, not just what, so you can stay in their lives. And this is my clicker. All right, today we watch our relationships like we watch TV. Everybody stares at a blank screen. It's impersonal. You spend just as much time looking at your screen and doing the impersonal things as you do actually engaging with people.
So the technology that was supposed to connect us doesn't. It actually does just the opposite, and it creates an opportunity to alienate people. And the sneaky thing about it is it's designed to do just that, because it's focused on the perception of what people are doing, not actually the thing that matters, which is how they're doing. All right, so Porchlight, like I said, it's an app that's all about knowing how somebody's doing, not just what. So you can, fundamental change here is, am I the one with the, okay. The fundamental change here is that it's about the personal relationship, not the technology. It's not about how long you stay on the app or the site. It's about how short you can stay on the site and have a meaningful engagement, right? Okay, so how do we do that? So it starts with these micro engagements that build the habit of how. And then it also helps you build a baseline by working on the what of your life. So how are you doing and why? Why are you doing that? The other thing is building up the how and the why. It helps you create engagement over time. So there's context that's required to be a part of your relationship. What's missing today is you have an iPhone, and on that phone you can text somebody at any moment. You can call somebody at any moment. But the problem with that is that that's just an open-ended communication, right? And if I was to call my 22-year-old son who's in college and say, how are you doing today? What do you think his answer would be? Fine, exactly. So what this allows you to do is it just through this 30-second engagement each day, you have a little bit of context about how somebody's life is going, and more importantly, what's going on in their life and why. And in doing that, it also, that 30-second engagement allows you to have that same personal one-on-one connection with as many people as are in your inner circle. The people that if you ask them how you're doing, that you really mean it. And if they ask you the same thing, they really want to know. All right, we feel like we have a pretty unique spot in the marketplace. There's a lot of tools that are out there today, like I mentioned with your smartphones, where it's a passive tool. You can reach out, but we all know that people won't reach out if they're really having a bad day. They don't want to go be a burden to somebody else. So there's a proactive nature to what we do that makes it super easy to just use your thumb, say, hey, today's a great day because, or hey, I'm actually a really complex person, so I might be happy about spending the weekend with my kids at ACL, but I'm kind of stressed about falling behind because I spent 3 days at ACL and it didn't work.